Fundamentally, when I pick anything to play, I'm honestly there to play it because it's fun. Fun, however, is honestly very subjective, so I'm not going to dive into that. But for whatever reason, I get that dopamine drip that makes me feel like, wow, I actually want to spend endless hours perfecting and mastering the rotation of this between striking dummies, extreme trials, savage mode, and other forms of content. But there's the turnaround. When I do think of super engaging abilities, or abilities that make me really want to learn more of the intricacies of how the kit works, or the overall gameplay loops, I'm just going to be honest. Some abilities people would consider major don't actually do anything for me. And on the top of that list is Scholar's Chain Stratagem for me. Which, yes, I'm going to say this immediately because I know people are going to read me. Absolutely, by any and all accounts, is an exceptional ability. In fact, it is so strong that this singular ability is why many raid compositions actually look at a scholar when they consider which healer that they want to take. Do you want white mage with more personal DPS or a scholar with chain stratagem? The raid leader be like, well, which one's going to make my personal DPS as samurai look higher? Scholar will. Okay, I pick scholar. And then the fact that chain stratagem hyperscales with the size of the group, like Ninja's Trick Attack and Alliance raids, or Delubrium Raid Janae, or Hunts, makes it absolutely filthy, disgusting, strong. But here's the plug. If you ain't gonna plug yourself, how the hell are you gonna plug anyone else? Gonna get any man up in here? But as always, if you want to help support me and my content, honestly, I can't say how far it goes to help me, and it would be super incredibly appreciated if you threw a modified core gameplay loop at that like button and cat daddied that subscribe button. Anyhow, I just felt like I need to get that chain stratagem disclaimer out of the way because when people come to this video, I'm afraid that they might zip to the comment section and say that I'm an idiotic scrub who has no idea what they're talking about. And that's true. I need to admit that's true. But in this case, I am especially convinced that the one-click button off of the global cooldown to apply a super powerful buff to a single target is strong and requires very little maintenance and investment to use, which inherently does add to its strength. I will be clear. It's very clear how and when to use it. And that is my exact problem with this skill, and one of my many problems with the current state of Scholar, and what I'm hoping will change in Endwalker. Chain Stratagem is literally the definition of fire and forget. That's it. There are more overt, not covert, overt nuances like aligning it with other raid buffs like Dancer's Technical Step or Bard's Battle Voice. You press one button and it's done though. It doesn't impact your kit, it doesn't impact your rotation, it doesn't impact your core gameplay loop at all. It doesn't make you in any capacity really play differently, especially now with the nerfs to energy drain, where power was shifted away recently from energy drain and funneled directly into broil, where yes, can you use a dissipation energy drain weave opener? Absolutely yes, that has always been a thing for Scholar, but the literal 10 fragments of potency that you gain from that, in my opinion, and it is just my opinion, I'm not saying it's fact, in my opinion, can never and will never outweigh the insane power of abilities like Excog, Indom, or Sacred Soil, which is literally the most busted healer cooldown in the game, in my opinion. And for the record, these are all off global cooldown abilities that you can use to buy more time to spam broils. Pop Chain Stratagem, align with raid buffs, continue to spam broil as usual. And to me, that isn't fun. Powerful? As I spent minutes going over, absolutely, but fun? No. I actually do have to say I resent this skill in large part because I do feel that this is honestly in part to blame for why Scholar has become a broil bot. Yes, you use heals, but fundamentally you are spamming broil, and then you refresh Biolysis every 30 seconds. I'm going to honestly say that I would take having 3 more dots, damage over time effects, to manage over this skill any day, because that would actually impact how I play on a consistent basis and shift my rotation. I am sick of casting Broil. I am so sick of casting Broil. Now I want to go into some case examples of what I think is a really well-designed addition to the kit. What really do I enjoy playing? So, Case 1 is Astrologian. When I look at Chain Stratagem as a healer, I immediately think Astrologian. And yes, I have played the Ast, and I know that there are certainly grievances with the new card system. I feel them myself. Trust me, don't worry, I hear you. It's not a perfect system, but the fact is the Ast's card system is, even in its current state, fundamentally engaging. I absolutely will go to bat for that. It is fundamentally far more engaging than the Scholars. You are constantly having your very own gameplay modified by the system moment to moment. You're drawing cards, aligning different types of seals. You're re-rolling cards. You're transforming excess cards into more powerful Lady or Lord of Crowns buffs for like your allies. You're then picking and choosing who to buff, which translates far better into AoE situations than Chain Stratagem, for the record. And then you're blowing it all on a tremendously powerful, massive wide party buff in Divination if you get all your seals right. And all the while, you are keeping up Malefic spam, which, yes, that is fundamentally pressing 1 2 every 30 seconds to refresh your dot, and that is the same as Broil. Yes, it is. But the fact is that the card system mitigates what I will call for myself broil fatigue. Even if you are spamming Malefic nonstop, the card system is a constant introduction of change. Your moment-to-moment gameplay is fundamentally altered by it. And my cases are even going to dive into other things than just healers, because I think that there are some incredibly good design examples, and there are so many examples of good design in this game, but I think that I want to shine a spotlight in particular with what I am most familiar with, which is Dancer and Bard. So Dancer gets standard step, which is primarily a buff for one ally, and technical step, which is primarily a buff for the entire party. These are skills that involve an RNG minigame of the right steps, like Final Fantasy XIV DDR. This is, at the end, an extremely powerful burst of damage and rewards you with a buff to yourself and ally and allies, which fundamentally the Dancer as a whole was always meant to be more buff oriented, and I think that the addition of like the burst damage was super cool. Sounds more involved already, right? So this actually goes a step further, and the Dancer has a special Esprit gauge that can be spent on extremely hard-hitting ability called Saber Dance. It's bonkers when you think about how often you can get it with the right buff setup. But Esprit is gained simply by having your damage buff on allies, which is giving you yet another layer of gameplay interaction. Your gameplay loop is being modified through your buffs. And you could make the argument, however, that Chain Stratagem is akin to Dancer's Devilment, in which case I am actually going to disagree. And I just say this because no one has said this yet to me, but I know in my brain this was something that I was comparing before. And it doesn't correlate, because Devilment is just one single part of the larger picture for synergy for the Dancer, where the synergy for Scholar is honestly you press Ruin 2, then you press Chain Stratagem. Maybe you place an Excog on the tank if you're feeling saucy. There's no further interaction from that for the Scholar's kit. And now I want to talk about the Bard, which, in spite of its genuine difficulties this expansion, I've seen how many people are parsing in content with it, I get it. But the Bard does genuinely get me excited design-wise, and is one of the most rewarding DPS to play. Which, no, I'm not just saying to be contrarian or a hipster or whatever, I really do love the Bard. The Bard has 3 songs that have incredibly different impacts on the very moment-to-moment gameplay. All 3 buff allies. All 3 can be augmented with Battle Voice to further buff allies. But where the design becomes the raw chef's kiss, is the moment-to-moment gameplay modifications for the Bard. And that is huge part of these skills, actually. Mage's Ballad transforms your kit that now you periodically can get to spam more Bloodletter or Rain of Death abilities. Very powerful off-global cooldown abilities that are not super heavy-hitting, but it's definitely Death by 1,000 Cuts kind of ability. They are, when you're spamming them, and with Mage's Ballad you're going to spam them, that adds up to a ton of damage. And while that might sound like a trivial modification, in the heat of gameplay, that is a huge cause sometimes of people having difficulties or frustrations with the Bard. Like, even I myself have been flooded with procs in a row off every single off-global cooldown with it. Just, quote-unquote, lucky RNG, but it also does feel bad when you're like, oh no, I need to somehow weave this in. But that is the thing. Or let's talk about Wanderer's Minuet, the next song, which is basically going to allow you to gain 3 stacking charges that can be blown on a tremendously powerful spike of damage called Pitch Perfect, which, with good RNG, absolutely can be spammed a lot and feels very rewarding to get off. The third and final song is Army's Paeon, which might be the quote-unquote most boring, but it can be stacked up with a self-buff that decreases your global cooldown per stack, which gets your GCD much lower, which means faster arrows to get off. It just makes the gameplay loop feel smoother, which I'm going to say something is less well documented, so when people like browse the bard skills, it just goes over their like awareness. It's just like, what's this? But when you change out of Army's Paeon, or the buff falls off of you naturally, even if you don't change song, you gain temporarily the buff Army's Muse that significantly reduces your global cooldown even outside of Army's Paeon, which speeds up your entire gameplay even longer, even when you're outside of Army's Paeon. And fundamentally, all of these effects are based off of your ability to maintain 2 damage over time effects on a target that will proc these effects. You can also cheat out these effects with an ability called Imperial Arrow, which again isn't on the skill Imperial Arrow, so a lot of people do miss this. But fundamentally, yeah, I am brought to say that I really do honestly genuinely find the Bard's entire song and rotation kit extremely well made, and the level of design and interaction between these various kits make the skills go very deep into modifying the core gameplay loop, which feels so good. Which sadly brings me back to the scholar for the conclusion of this video. Between Astrologian, Bard, and Dancer, the examples given here, I am really left saying that I do not enjoy Chain Stratagem, and that honestly, I wish that I had something that just changed my core gameplay loop more. From moment to moment, I just want something different. And long gone, I understand, long gone are the days where the scholar maintained 7 damage over time effects and could macro the fairy. Yet I still can't help but feel that if I was given an option, like 2 different buttons in front of me, or just even one, that said, if you hit this button, you will be able to trade in the simple to use but deadly effect of Chain Stratagem for 3 more damage over time effects to make up for the DPS loss, that I would be hammering that button to trade it in. I would be hammering that button without hesitation. Anyhow, that does it for this video, and I hope that it provided some insights, or maybe it even just perked your curiosity. As always, if you want to help support me and my content, it would be incredibly super appreciated if you threw a modified core gameplay loop at that like button and cat daddy that subscribe button. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope to catch you next time.